I trust you enjoyed your slightly truncated lunch break and feeling re-energized ahead of this, our next and final session for our conference. But before we start the next and final session, I think it's time for another lucky draw. Wouldn't you say so? So we're giving away a 2-day course sponsored by the School of Consulting Engineering. It's Excel for engineers and other built environment professionals. It's worth 2 CPD points, valued at 4,222 Rand. So let's pull up the wheel, give it a spin, and let's see where it lands. May the winner be the lucky one, or the lucky one be the winner. Can we bring up the wheel, please? And we have a winner, Sisanda Tele. I'm going to say that again. We do have a winner. Our winner is none other than Sisanda Tele. So if you would please announce yourself in some way and claim your prize, but we'll certainly make sure that you do get it in case you are not able to join us for this last session. So, delegates, colleagues, speakers, this afternoon, our focus is going to be on the topic of infrastructure projects and the impact thereof, namely poverty reduction, employment creation, and closing the equality gap. And so therefore, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce and welcome our next facilitator and CESA's very own Vice President, Mr. Aru Saluary. A little bit about Aru, if I may. Aru Saluary is the Managing Director of AOS Consulting Engineers. He is a professional engineer and a professional construction project manager with over 30 years experience. He holds a master's in industrial engineering and a BSc honors degree with second class upper in mechanical engineering. In addition to this, he holds a qualification of accredited tier designer expert from the Uptime Institute in the USA. He's a Green Star accredited professional from the Green Building Council of South Africa, a LEED, AP, sounds like I'm rattling off the alphabet. Most of you may understand this, the BD plus C, with US Green Building Council. He's a certified data center designer by CNET in the USA and a data center energy practitioner by the USC Department of Energy. In 2011, he was one of the top male entrepreneur finalists in the Oliver Empowerment Awards. Allow me to welcome Alu to the podium, and Alu, thank you for joining us.
It's the last session that we have to go through. And what we have at the moment, we have excellent speakers lined up, and we are looking forward to what is going to happen at the end of the day. Our first speaker is Mr. Makozoma. He's a civil engineer with extensive experience in the infrastructure, construction, and transport environment. He's currently leading the South African National Road Agency into his third decade as its chief executive officer. Under his leadership, SANRAL has developed a new long-term strategy called Horizon 2030. He previously was CEO of the Electronic Toll Company and Managing Director of the Johannesburg Roads Agency. He has also served as the Executive for Strategy at CESA IT Group and Chief Officer for Transport, Logistics, Hospitality, and Accommodation at the 2010 FIFA World Cup Local Organizing Committee. Skumbuzo has served on the board of SANRAL and was also the chairman of the Airports Company South Africa. He started his career at the CSIR Building and Construction Technology Division as a research engineer and moved on to manage transport infrastructure at the National Department of Transport, first as director and later as chief director. He holds a BSc and MSc in civil engineering from the University of the Witwatersrand. Mr. Mokuzana, we welcome you on stage to listen to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sulade, our facilitator. Thank you to CESA and Mr. Campbell, our program director. As introduced, I'm Skumbuzo Matozoma, the CEO at the South African National Roads Agency. I'm here to present our infrastructure program as invited by CESA at the Infrastructure Indaba, the theme of which is infrastructure projects impact on poverty reduction, employment creation, and closing the inequality gap. SANRAL, of course, is the custodian of national roads. We are the mass mover of passengers and cargo. We play the role of stimulating economic activity through construction activities as well as mobility, linking the hinterland with our coastal areas for trade purposes, as well as linking economic centers with places where people live, as well as mining and agricultural areas. We are the pathfinders for economic and social development because, as the old adage says, wherever a road passes, development soon follows. We facilitate regional economic integration because a lot of our network connects us with the different countries in the SADC and African region. And of course, we spearhead the rebuilding of the economy as well as the construction industry. We claim this because, and we feel it's justified, we manage a network of 22,253 kilometers of national road network, the collective asset value of which is around 413 billion. It's an asset that you don't want to let go of in the country, and collectively it is said to be the single biggest asset that we own in our country. Of course, it's an important avenue of mobility because roads account for 87.9% of freight movements in our country and 93.7% of passenger trips. The national road system itself accounts for 70% of all freight that moves on South African roads. Our non-toll roads comprise 87% of our network. I know our toll portion is very popular, but it's a very small component of the network that we are responsible for. I've just put there quite a few amounts relating to the budget allocations for the different financial years running from 2019-20 to 23-24. As you can see there, SANRAL averages above 21 billion per annum in terms of the budget that we have, that we give to market on an annual basis, through which players in the construction industry benefit. 13% of our roads, of course, are tolled, 7% managed by us directly, and we source funding through capital markets, and then in turn, the people fund the schemes through toll levies. This includes the famous GVP toll scheme. 6% is managed by the private sector, some 10% of balance sheet financing that we've already seen planted in our road network system. We have developed critical trunk routes that we've delivered, including your N4 East and N4 West, the N1 corridor, N3 corridors, the N8 corridor to Lesotho, N11 corridor to Botswana, and the N17 corridor to Swaziland. So how do we gear ourselves up to be able to deliver on this important mandate and ensure continuous delivery? The starting point, of course, is clarity of vision. Without clarity of vision, you are all over the show, delivering at the qualms and instructions of many influencers with no coherent delivery program. That is what we have sought to strengthen at SANRAL by clarifying our vision. We have developed Horizon 2030, which is our long-term strategy that was launched by the Minister of Transport back in 2017. The focus is on infrastructure investment and job creation. It mirrors the aims of the National Development Plan. Quite a lot of our corridors underpin a lot of the projects and objectives that have been articulated in the National Development Plan. People need to get access to education, they need to get access to economic centers, agricultural hubs, mining areas, healthcare facilities, and all this happens in one way or another through navigating our network. We want to manage and expand critical infrastructure of the road network to create economic value. We've decided to share our expertise as a targeted objective with South Africans as well as Sub-Saharan Africa. There's quite a lot of experience we've amassed over the years that we have now put together into advisory capabilities that we are sharing with other roads authorities across our continent and beyond. We want to maintain existing infrastructure and invest in capital projects in an inclusive manner. And we've articulated a very clear transformation policy. Some people love us for it, some people hate us for it, depending on where you sit in the market. But we took a presentation on transformation earlier, and I think the importance of it is absolutely clear to everyone in the facility today. Funding policy and appropriate models, this is what we continue to push and fight for, which is also part of the challenges and opportunities that we face as an organization. We have taken a very disciplined process of strengthening the institution that I'm leading. My term is ending in November, and I'm glad to say that as I leave an entity that has been strengthened institutionally. First of all, we've got clear focus. We've got a long-term vision. We've decided to review our network growth and make sure that it is measured, sustainable, funded, and it's not going to lead to a case where SANRAL doesn't have the capacity to be able to deliver on its mandate. We've delivered a long-term roads plan, which we have approval to consult with industry. That's the 2030 roads plan, and many in the consulting fraternity will be invited to engage on this with us. We have initiated processes to review our mandate where we feel that there are certain limiting provisions in our act. We've looked at the model that we use to support other roads authorities to ensure that we're more effective in doing that and not creating a big brother mentality that is going to lead to the further weakening of other roads authorities. We've sought to put more emphasis on relevance. This is not just about being the best, but it's about creating value. And we're pushing a very aggressive transformation agenda. In terms of reforms, we've delivered a new operating model, which is of course leading to a new institutional structure within SANRAL. We have sought to pursue accreditation with the various ISO accreditation platforms. We've made reforms in the SCM environment as occasioned by the reforms that were initiated by National Treasury as a consequence of the review done in 2015. We've strengthened our governance structures. For the first time, SANRAL has an internal audit function it never had before. We've strengthened risk, we've strengthened legal, we've strengthened governance in general. We've strengthened the board. We've sought to separate the roles of board and CEO and management. And we've sought to recruit capable people to be able to join the SANRAL fold. We have a very progressive ICT 2023 strategy that has elevated us and led us to transcend into the phase of agility. When COVID struck, we were ready to have our people work remotely, and it has rewarded us handsomely. We've sought relevance for every national road project we do now. There are community projects that are being delivered, which is something that we never used to do in the past. In terms of delivery, the focus is on the 2030 roads plan. Smart roads is what we've embraced. As we know, intelligent technology and data-driven road infrastructure and services are what is dominant now across the world. We've got maintenance projects underway, strengthening projects, improvement projects, expansion of the network, community development projects, as well as job creation and supplier development. From a visioning perspective, we have abandoned the pursuit of being the best in the world in preference of delivering value for South Africans. We've got 10 fresh new strategic objectives we are pursuing, and our focus is on reputation, delivering the road network system that South Africa deserves, transformation, agility, as well as serving Africa and beyond. 4 focus areas, 2 used to be there, 2 are new. The 2 that used to be there, roads and mobility. We've added road safety, a very important component because we do high quality roads, but people go crazy on that surface, and we need to make sure that we protect lives. And stakeholders, we've been bent a lot in previous years, and we've now elevated it into a pillar, and no project gets delivered at SANRAL these days without stakeholder engagement happening. On the funding side, we've reaffirmed government as the major funder for SANRAL, being a Schedule 3A entity, and we will not abandon that. We've got private finance that we are going to continue pursuing, even at the face of criticism and rejection of the toll model, and we've seen opportunities to generate our own revenue. In terms of development projects, of course, it's the 2030 roads plan, smart roads projects. We've got flagships, an extensive budget program with over 1,000 projects over the MTF period, and the e-toll scheme itself. With all of that clarity of vision, we then focus on delivery. And there are certain things that we've done to make sure that we succeed in this regard. Number one, of course, SANRAL has a very mature asset management system. We call it ITIS. So there's no hunger of projects. We always have a pipeline extending over into the medium and long term in the organization. The key question that tends to hold us back is a chosen funding policy for infrastructure projects in this country. I've just quoted a number of projects here as examples. Some of them are moving, some of them have been completed, some of them are going nowhere because of this impasse with funding policy. That's very unfortunate because all of these projects on the list are absolutely necessary in this country. We've got flagship projects, and I've listed them on the screen. 6 very important projects across our country, major economic arteries that contribute significantly to economic development in this country. All of them currently underway, except for the N2 strand, which is still at planning stage. Big budgets, for instance, Moloto Road in excess of 10 billion, the N2, N3 in KwaZulu-Natal in excess of 20 billion, the N2 Wild Coast, some 15 billion. These are big projects. Of course, the president had visited our N2 Wild Coast project last week with big promises of job creation, SMME development, and the development of community access roads. We also are contributing to the presidential economic stimulus. We have been awarded a total of 3.5 billion in phase 1, which we are using to advance projects on the N2 Wild Coast, the N2, N3 flagship, community development projects, and ministerial priority projects that have been mandated to SANRAL. And we project some 20,000 full-time job equivalents to be created when those jobs are completed. Phase 2 we've applied for. We request 4.5 billion in that regard. It will unlock another 17 billion when the first allocation unlocked 12 billion within SANRAL's own budget. And this is to, again, have 25 capacity expansion projects and road improvement projects, 11 community development projects, with the promise of some 25,000 full-time job equivalents to be delivered with this program as well. We don't stop there. We're part of Infrastructure South Africa, working with Dr. Ramokgopa in advancing the SIDS system of project preparation. We've contributed to the development of the National Infrastructure Plan 2050. Our contribution, of course, is the 2030 roads plan. We have developed the SANRAL 14-point plan in support of our transformation policy, which makes it very clear now how people in local communities can participate in SANRAL projects when they get delivered in their jurisdictions. We're looking to tap into the infrastructure fund, which is a promising new blended finance pot to be able to access funding to deliver on some of our projects. We, of course, have 14 of our projects that were gazetted by Minister Dilil as the new SIPs, and we've got projects in the previous SIPs as well, SIP 3, SIP 2, including the N3 corridor and the N2 corridor. This is the budget program for the next 3 years. We've got a total of 1,268 projects to be rolled out. Quite a fair number of these are already out on tender. Some of them have already been awarded. Those that follow us will know that there's been a ramp up at SANRAL of projects that are being awarded. The country is now very busy from SANRAL projects. In Limpopo, of course, we're delivering the Musina Ring Road. We've just completed the Limpopo Ring Road. We're busy on the N3 and N2 in KwaZulu-Natal. In the N2 Wild Coast, we're busy, and there are projects across all 9 of our provinces. You will see that in the way that we plan our budget at SANRAL. For the non-toll portion, we try and maintain a ratio of around 50-50 for allocation of capex and maintenance. Over the medium term, there'll be an upswing on the capex side, but we still maintain maintenance at 45%. We had quite a bit of budget overruns, not overruns, underspends in the past few years due to quite a number of reasons. including the introduction, of course, of the new PPPFA regulations at National Treasury, which led to an impasse between us of some 18 months, trying to find agreement on how projects would be delivered. We also had, of course, project stoppages on site due to people that are coming in the name of the 30% that was announced by government and radical economic transformation. Also, COVID has affected the way that we deliver projects, but we are currently on ramp up. We've been prudent in requesting amounts going forward, and we've not asked for more monies. On the toll side, you're seeing some severely constrained CAPEX programs due to, of course, the anti-toll sentiment in our country. We've lost an opportunity for funding some 14 billion rand worth of projects from the NDB as well as MIGA, and all this as a result of the impasse with the e-toll scheme and questions around SANRAL's financial viability. We've not been to the bond market since 2016, and that's not good. However, we have had some successful private placements with investors that trust us and know our brand. We are not claiming to be an entity without challenges. You will see on the trend of delivery and spend, there has been a downward trend since 2017. I've given the reasons. The PPPFA has come up with a lot of challenges that we've had to go through, but we've been through that now, and there is an upswing in terms of project delivery. And then, of course, the most important thing where SANRAL is concerned, on the toll side, we get a lot of money from bond markets, and at some point, those bonds will mature. We're entering an era where for the next 3 or 4 years, there's going to be some big bond maturities, which means we need access to finance for us to be able to do that. The current uncertainty in terms of funding policy is not assisting, and we need to be able to deal with that. Finally, looking ahead, opportunities come with the issues that I'm stating here below. Number one, there's no other way. The e-toll scheme decision has to come. It's been postponed for quite a number of times. We've done all the technical work. There are no easy answers. All the options we've presented to government have implications, very significant financial implications. And I think we must just make a decision, bite the bullet and do so. There's not going to be an answer that is not going to affect South Africans in the pocket, including cancellation. Cancellation, in fact, is the most expensive of the options that are on the table. So it's a complex decision, but it must be made. It's not assisting that we don't have a decision. We need rapid ramp back from COVID across all entities that operate in our space. Clients should be able to churn projects out and approve them so that the private sector can then be able to implement. Consultants should have adequate capacity to be able to deliver on an average of 21 billion rands per annum that SANRAL is committing over the next 5 years, and so should contractors. Roads funding policy clarity is absolutely critical. We must decide, are we going to use private finance to develop road infrastructure, or are we not? Because we're wasting time. There's a lot of opportunities that are slipping us by because of this uncertainty. The future of SANRAL is important. Are we going to remain a 25,000 kilometer road network authority as we project in Horizon 2030, or are we going to expand to 50,000 or 70,000 kilometers as other corners of our country are proposing? Because we seem to be the most geared to be able to deliver. As we do so, we need to determine what the future of provincial and local roads authorities is going to be. We also need to unlock a lot of the regulatory bureaucracy that is affecting how we execute our work, whether it's environmental approvals, mining approvals, whether it's approvals of guarantees at National Treasury, and so it goes, for us to be able to free this institution to be able to deliver on the mandate that it has been given. Thank you very much, facilitator. I'm done with my presentation.
There are some key points that you actually stated that I want to actually zero in on, and hopefully during the Q&A, be able to answer that. Your word that SANRAL is the pathfinder. That's actually quite amazing to actually look at that. And I want you to start thinking, as part of the question we're going to give you during the Q&A, is that as the pathfinder, what has happened to the society or the impact that you've had within the society where you are doing business in terms of roads and all that. So thank you for that, Mr. Makuzoma. Really appreciate it. Stay online for questions and answer. Appreciate it. Our next speaker is Ms. Chamane. Ms. Chamane holds a bachelor's degree in technology, civil engineering. She's a registered professional technologist with CESA, a member of CESA, IMESA, and SAT, and is also registered with NHBRC as an engineer and builder. She has more than 13 years of experience in a variety of engineering fields, both in consulting and client-based employment. She has worked for a variety of government departments, municipalities, seconded on Labisa Municipality as technical manager and civil engineer consulting firm. She is CEO at M&C Consulting Engineers. In June 2021, she was nominated for the Top Women Leaders 17th edition as endorsed by Standard Bank and supported by Commission for Gender Equality. Ms. Chamane is a highly dedicated woman to the civil engineering profession, and her dedication is shown through her passionate involvement in the following: assisting other young technologists and technicians who want to register with CESA, as a member of the Zululand CESA branch, where she currently holds the position of training and events, her unwavering support for EMISA. Ms. Chamane, you are welcome online. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director Alu. My name is Nenhlanhla Kamane. As the Program Director has introduced me, I'm the CEO and the founder of the M&C Consulting Engineers. I'll be presenting on the current topic, which is infrastructure project impact, poverty reduction, employment and creation, and closing the gap. My presentation it's got a 4 table of contents. It's introduction, background, and recommendation. As I have been asked to speak about this topic, so my introduction is infrastructure project impact in the following: poverty reduction, employment, and closing the gap inequality. The objective of National Development Plan targets to reach by 2030. I will go straight to the background. We're still having the challenges in terms of planning the infrastructure project. Planning of infrastructure projects are done such as planning of infrastructure projects are done in such a way that is prioritized more and compromise rural areas. The budgeting of the budget is allocated based on the population. This still put the rural community at disadvantage. The government has tried to do rural development to unlock the inequality and of the community, but it does not work. As I have said on my previous point, that the budget of each it depends to the community. The background: most projects are not budget for skills transfer for training. This is very negative impact on the gap that we're trying to reach, especially in the local municipality and provincial project. You find that the project have been done, but there is no training, especially for the maintenance. The previous Central, they are doing 45% maintenance. The current challenge that we are facing in the local and provincial project is that we keep on building the project, but the skills transfer for the project has been done. So all this, it's taking back, the infrastructure has been done, and it's also that gap, the infrastructure is not being fulfilled. There is no proper planning to those trained personnel, as I have said, for the infrastructure that is already there. And it's become very difficult that you build something and it gets damaged. As we have seen during the looting, that most of the projects were damaged and enough skills for maintenance, especially the artisans. So all these mentions, they make it difficult for infrastructure projects to close the gap. I have put out some recommendation with a question mark. Can we do something as engineers to reach the gap? What is the role of the government? I'm glad the previous speaker on the previous topic has spoke about the role of professional engineers in the government sector, who need to not be professional so that the infrastructure can be taken care. And we also need to put more effort on artisans, because they are the ones that will be maintaining the infrastructure. What government is doing different since we've been doing one and the same thing? Do you also all know about infrastructure development plan? Do we also all get involved in architecture and planning, development, or infrastructure projects in our community, not as engineers only, but where we are staying? And then I'm moving to the next point, where I'm still asking us to ask ourselves by the government. Government need to create environmental for investors to develop in rural areas, especially in the coastal areas, because the reason why there is still a gap in inequality of the infrastructure is because people are still immigrating from rural to urban areas, and the rural areas in disadvantage, as I have mentioned, that the budget is allocated based on the budget of each or whatever entity on the population. To able to stop immigration from people moving from rural areas, we need to develop, I have said before, developments need to be mixed. Currently, the development that are happening in the rural areas, you will find that we're only doing the shopping center, which are also being closing down because there's no job opportunity and there's no good schools for the kids. So people are still immigrating from rural to urban. We also need to have the long-term plan for the project. I'm recommending that the projects need to be planned according to the needs of the community, not in line within the 5 years of the political head that are leading, is either national government or provincial or local municipality. Operation of the institutions and professionals. I think as engineers, we need to be captured, because especially the one that is working for government, we still do the projects not in the need of the community because a certain politician is staying in that area or one ask for that project. For the able to continue the project infrastructure to be providing long-term employment to the people, service provider need to be paid on time, project can be completed in time, so that the people will not end up not being employed. The municipalities should implement it within their municipalities and create job opportunities, so that within the municipality, the training of the local suppliers and artisans and laborers can be done on municipality to immigration. I think I've been speaking about the artisan. We still have TVET college. We do have TVET college in South Africa, but the quality of the education there, we are still producing. So if we can, the TVET colleges can produce the artisan that they know how the education quality is high, so that we can break the gap of artisans, and maintenance of the project. I will move then to government role in planning. We still have the vision, as previous speaker spoke about NTPC 2020 vision beyond. Some people, they still know NTP. And the municipalities are planning and other institutions not in line with what the national government is planning. Government need to provide the conducive environment for investors to be able to work in those areas. I won't repeat this one. It's been spoke about professionals within the government spheres and private, that we are not professional by paper, but we are practicing professionalism. Move to state capture. I think I've said that to be away from being state captured and planning, the project should be moved from plan in line with the current government, either locally, but should be planned according to the need of the community. Thank you.
I think you've made some key submission there, and we are going to explore that further during the Q&A. One of the key submissions that you've picked up is the issue of planning. And the last statement you made, I don't want to sound controversial when it comes to state capture, but when you made a statement about the synergy in terms of planning between provincial and national government, I would like you to think about that and actually look at areas that we can explore for this discussion going forward. And you should look at the chat. I'm going to send some questions onto the chat for you as well, just for you to pick up. But thank you very much for your submission. Your passion about the rural development actually came through excellently well. And we're going to actually explore that also during the Q&A for you to tell us about rural area and what you talk about development. The last statement you made about shopping center development that is going on in the rural area and closing down, and job creation is being affected. I would like you to think about that as well and give us an insight as to how do we address this and how do we move forward with that. So thank you very much, Ms. Chamane, and we really do appreciate your time. Our next speaker is Dr. Foster. He is the Chief Designer at Zutari. He's a geotechnical engineer. He's professionally registered with the Engineering Council of South Africa. He's a fellow of CESA. In addition, Dr. Foster is a winner of the CESA Engineer of the Year and SAPSA Professional of the Year Engineering Awards. He served in roles such as Director and Chair of the Impact Catalyst NPC. He's the board and chairperson of Bukamoso Barona Implementation Agent Steering Committee. Dr. Foster is privileged to have been involved in iconic infrastructure projects across RSA, Africa, and the Middle East. He has published over 32 papers, industry articles, and opinion pieces, and acts on the Civil Engineering Advisory Board of the University of Pretoria and the University of the Witwatersrand. Dr. Foster has a PhD in geotechnical engineering, a B.Eng honors in geotechnical engineering magna cum laude, and a B.Eng civil, also magna cum laude. Dr. Foster, you are welcome online. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. I'm glad to be speaking at the CESA Infrastructure Virtual Indaba. And I'd like to speak to you today about impact through collaboration, where why, excellence, and the greater good meet. So I'd like to start off by contending that impact, whether project impact or otherwise, really starts with me or with you and your companies and your perception of why we do things. Maybe our perception is something like the Louvre in Abu Dhabi. You can see it's a beautiful structure, architecturally fantastic. And look at the engineering needed for that roof, the white tiling, the tranquilness of the water, such a scarce commodity in that area, all culminating to a beautiful cultural experience. Or perhaps it's something like the Millau Bridge in Italy, functional structure traversing a wide valley, beautifully architectured. And look at that engineering design, thin slab, tall columns, really functional. Maybe that's impact. I remember when I was a young engineer, And I can still remember listening to the radio at the time, and the resident engineer of the Petronas Towers in KL came on. And he was speaking about sliding these two towers simultaneously so that the two do not affect each other. And I thought, wow, that must be impact. I'd like to be part of that. Or later on, when I went to Scotland and I heard about the Falkirk wheel, they were lifting boats from one canal to another. Multidiscipline engineering, mechanical, electrical, electronics, civil, coming together and really making water flow upwards, opening this transportation system. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great to be on a project as impactful as that? But it wasn't really up until the point that I sat in a room with a number of international students, and the professor asked us, so tell us about a project that would epitomize impact and why you wanted to become an engineer in the first instance. And it wasn't one of these fancy projects that came up at the time for me. It was a project in rural Limpopo at the turn of the 2000s as part of government's schooling program. And as you can see, these are not very fancy structures, single story, simple civils. But I remember walking onto the site and the headmaster coming towards me, taking his jacket off, rolling up his sleeves and commandeering school children and parents to come and help me take my samples. They weren't seeing that we were building a school. They saw people investing in the education of their children. So I knew on that day that what I wanted to do was to make an impact. So as a first takeout today, I'd like you to think about what is your why and your company's why or your department's why about why you do these things. But of course, this is not the only recipe. In Southern Africa, we have excellent projects. One that's close to my heart is the Lesotho Highlands Water Project. I can remember as a schoolboy in primary school, people talking about the next phases of this project. Now, of course, this project has been in the making for 70 or 90 years. But what is immense about this project is of a resource that occurs in abundance in Lesotho and sharing it with South Africa, where it is a scarce commodity for a greater good, and aligning the technical excellence locally and internationally to bring something together that today is dubbed one of the most influential projects in the last 100 years. What a project. Or the Gautrain. And I remember stepping off the plane in 2006, and we were all in euphoria still about winning the 2010 World Cup bid. And everybody was so connected to building infrastructure. But there was one annoying or infuriating discussion going on at the time, at least from my perspective. And it was about why would we actually create first world infrastructure like this in South Africa? Will it not just be a white elephant? People don't use things like this. But wisdom prevailed. And the greater good to not only connect the economy within Gauteng, and not only connect the economy through OR Tambo to the country, but also connecting the country to the world. And today we can probably not imagine a future without a Gautrain. It's influenced our engineering, it's influenced the way we build, and we've built a backbone that will stand us in good stead for years to come. What a project. And then in 2011 to 2014, the first of our renewable energy independent power producers procurement programs. This is a picture of the lovely cookhouse at the escarpment. And I remember driving with our client and a number of others in the car. And there was this debate about, is it sensible to invest in these kind of projects? At the time, wind was still considered as really inefficient. Cost-wise, it was more expensive than coal. And look at the area that it takes. Maybe it will affect bird flight, and maybe it will affect what you do with the land underneath. And look, where are we now? At the time, wisdom prevailed for the need of a diversification in energy, and also attacking the climate change problem that we're talking so much of today. It brought the best of excellence locally and again internationally to bring a number of these projects, and still dubbed one of the most important programs that we've run in energy in the country. And today we're looking at the fourth and maybe the fifth and the sixth of this program rolling out. as we gain momentum on this program, on this process. So, as the second takeout, I'd like you to consider that one needs to align the why you do it to a greater good vision underlain by technical excellence. But that's not the entire story yet. I'd like to put another piece in there. And I'd like to describe this around the Impact Catalyst project, or the program. Now, Impact Catalyst is both a program and a not-for-profit company. And what it wants to do is to create socioeconomic impact at scale through the collaboration of public and private sector. And the very first thing that grabs you about Impact Catalyst is its core partners. Firstly, two mining companies that on any other given day might be rivals in the market. A consultant that on any day would be working for any of these companies. The CSIR leading innovation and technology. The IDC as a development finance institution with a range of projects that it's funding. World Vision, the largest NGO in the world, to connect communities. And then the passion of the Mine Water Cooperative, looking after that scarce resource of ours that we actually produce during mining, and to use that as impactfulness. What a radical collaboration. What is also impactful about this grouping is that it starts strategically by the supporting governmental planning process. The realization that neither government nor private sector can solve the issues that need solving in South Africa. But if we take a collective approach, we can truly achieve impact. So any strategy then that we develop needs to be co-created between government and industry to align resources and energy. And any initiative coming out of that strategy will just not make an impact if it's not strategically aligned with governmental strategy and resources. So what they do is they start at the National Development Plan and influence where the provincial development plans so that these can be properly aligned to the district IDPs and the municipality infrastructure development plans. And just because these are catalyzed at the moment by mining currents, also the mining companies' social and labor plan. And never again should a mine then be able to say that we are spending hundreds of millions in Northern Cape or Mpumalanga or Limpopo where we work, and it doesn't make impact, because these plans need to feed directly back to the National Development Plan. When that works, projects such as the on-demand manufacturing project that is currently in pilot stage comes to the fore, utilizing high-end 3D metal printing facilities to print components that are used on a daily basis on the mines, but are imported from Gauteng, for instance, to Northern Cape. Setting up a business in the Northern Cape that is catalyzed off the mine, but that can actually feed a market even when the mine is not there. Or the community-oriented primary healthcare project. Now, when this runs, it will benefit around 3.6 million people. But just look at the partnerships to make this work. Academia, mining companies, CSIR, faith groups. And this was really catalyzed during those early days of level 5 lockdown, when everyone wanted to support government properly in the health program. And then maybe going full circle from where we started with that impactful Limpopo project to the school ICT project, linking schools to high-speed broadband for educational purposes, targeting 250 schools and intending to link 300,000 pupils per year over the next 3 years. And again, just look at that partnership. CSIR, mining companies, technology companies, faith groups, NGOs. So I'd like to contend that as the third takeout that we take from this is radical collaboration as a platform for this impact. So ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, impact to accelerate quality of life through infrastructure projects requires aligning one's why to a greater good, underlain by the best of technical excellence on a platform of radical collaboration. If we do this, we may be in a position to engineer the future, contribute to poverty reduction, play a role in employment creation, and thereby hopefully closing the equality gap over time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
There are some things that you repeated several times that I think that we're going to ask you during the Q&A. And one of the key words that you repeated is wisdom prevailed. Wisdom prevailed. Wisdom prevailed. And I think it's good to actually explore that further. What do you mean by that? And how do we actually take this forward? Some key pointers that you've raised, which is a question for all of us on the platform, is what is your why? And even if you know your why must be backed up with excellence in order to have a wonderful impact in the society. And you are going to explore some key things in terms of the Impact Catalyst project, in terms of what you seek to do and how that is going to translate to job creation for everybody later as well. So thank you for a wonderful presentation, and we look forward to the Q&A. Our last speaker, unfortunately, is not available to join us, but just to read out his CV, his presentation will be available from CESA for us to actually look at. His name is Mr. Mjawara. He is the executive in charge of infrastructure development at the Umgeni Water, and he has a combined experience of 23 years, both in the public and the private sector. He's an IMISA vice president when it comes to technical division. Is professionally registered with EXA as a professional engineering technologist, and is currently busy with his global executive development program with Gibbs. However, Mr. Mjawara, unfortunately, is not here with us, except if he's here now that I don't know of. Can the organizer confirm if Mr. Mjawara is here with us or not? Okay. In the absence of Mr. Mjawara, we will go to our question time. So we'll invite all the panelists back on stage, and we're going to start question and answer with them. Thank you. Okay, can we bring all the panelists on stage for the Q&A session, organizers?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Makozoma. The first question I'll have for you before we open up this Q&A to the participants is actually the issue of the pathfinder in terms of SANRAL, what you said that you are a pathfinder and all that. And I want you to actually explore that and actually break that down for us and look at the impact of SANRAL as a pathfinders in terms of the society where you find yourself in. Thank you.
Thanks. Of course, it's an important principle, and it takes effect in different angles. So the one angle would be we've got regional offices located in Cape Town, Maritzburg, Pretoria, as well as Gqeberha. We have instructed our regional managers to ensure that they immerse themselves in regional and local planning, so that SANRAL's own plans are integrated into IDPs and provincial growth and development strategy, so that we don't, as a national entity, plan in isolation and deliver projects that don't seek to enhance what regional and local economies are pursuing. In that regard, people benefit a lot from the developments that we then deploy to ensure that it begins to stimulate regional and local economic activity. There's enough evidence of that. If you look at the Mainland node in Pretoria, for instance, if you look at the Allandale node in Johannesburg, for instance, you look in other provinces as well, you will see what's happening in Mbombela right now because of the ring road we developed there, and we're currently finalizing the Carino interchange. So that's the one dimension. As a direct consequence of the infrastructure improvements we do, the exciting one, in fact, that's recent is the Hammersdale interchange we did in KwaZulu-Natal. I see warehouses developing right around it right now. It shows how it stimulates economic activity. The second most important point in my book is we decided we want to ensure that we don't just do roads that are high speed that go past communities. The nature of national roads has changed from roads that traverse farm areas in the Bundus to roads where communities are located and people interact on both sides of national roads with our infrastructure. So we have developed public transport enablement guidelines to have new design standards for national roads in cases where they traverse communities. But also we've decided as a policy, for every national road project we do, we stop, go into a community, ask what the needs are, and have a community development budget that we use to implement community projects that are identified with communities as we deliver the national roads adjacent to them.
Thank you for that, Mr. Makozoma. One of the other questions I'll to you, but I'd like you to know this question about ITO. You made a clear statement about it. It is time to make a decision, and whatever decision we make has influence the bottom line. And the most important one is that if we cancel, is actually the most expensive. So I'm going to pack that, but I want you to think about that and maybe expose that or expound on that in terms of what is happening in terms of ITO. I want to go to Ms. Chamane, and the question I want to ask you, during your presentation, you are very passionate about rural development, and you made some submission about planning between provincial and the national. Maybe talk us through in terms of rural development, what do we need to do? What impact do we need as a collective to have in rural development from your point of view? Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director, Mr. Olam. I think, as I have said, that to stop immigration, we need to put more on the rural development. But currently, what is happening is that you'll find that in the small town, they are building a shopping center, which is not going to be effective to the community because there is no job opportunities. So if you are doing the development in a rural area, you need to have the mixed development. So they are working, they are going to be shopping in the shopping center. They do have the work. Currently, what is happening in rural areas, you find developers come and build the shopping center, which is not catering current community, and the shops or whatever investors that have invested, it's a loss of money because the community and that community, they can those services. So we need a mixed development, as I have put it on my presentation. If you're putting a shopping center, you need to put good schools, maybe do some hotel. As Mr. Makozoma was saying, they have developed some road in Maritzburg. Then it's mixed development. Now the industrial are starting to build the industrial. Then the shopping center can be developed because there is a road, there is an industrial area that are being built. Then the community can work, and then we can. I don't know if I've answered the question.
Yeah, it does, but that is an interesting perspective. I'm going to explore that further with you because when you talk of shopping center development, remember that most developers will not bring the workers from anywhere else. Most workers are based within the community. That's the first instance. The second instance you look at, which you actually alluded to during your presentation, is the maintenance and skills transfer. So how do we now combine that to say, okay, developers come in, they develop the thing, but they need the local community as workers that goes in. Then how do we attribute the future maintenance and upkeep of those centers? Would that not benefit the community? I want you to think about it. We will come back to you. So let me go to Dr. Foster as well. Dr. Foster, you talked about wisdom prevail. I want you to expound on that and also maybe break down a little bit what is the why of development from your point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saluary. So I think wisdom come from a variety of places. And one thing about wisdom is the clear gathering of facts and the understanding of trends where the world is going, and also being very clear about those uncomfortable facts of one's status quo. Because if one starts from there, you can actually plot a different path. And you would also have the guns really to argue with others who are naysayers and may not understand where we need to go. It's also about very strong leadership. We've had a great CEO in the past who used to tell us, remember, great leadership is not about showing people where they want to go. It's showing people where they have to go. And there's a difference in that. And I think strong leadership, if we have that, then wisdom comes out of that leadership. So your second part of the question, can you please repeat that?
You talked about the why.
Yes. Oh, the why of development.
Yeah.
Yes. So the why for me, it's both a personal thing and it's also a project thing and a vision of the company. So, many youngsters, when they come into our company, think when we ask them to do a timesheet that the only reason we want to do this is because we want to make money. But the company actually has a different vision. It wants to do some kind of impact, whichever company we are or government department. And in doing that, you align then people who want to make that same kind of a difference. So when you choose a project to work on, because we do choose, or when a developer chooses something to do, that becomes the purpose. It's not just building a bridge or a building or a road. It actually has a wider purpose, and that becomes the why. And if you can align to that, that becomes a really, really powerful tool to get it done to the best of our abilities.
Thank you, Dr. Foster. That aligns to what Mr. Makuzoma said in the morning when he started his presentation. He talked about clarity of vision. And I think, Mr. Makuzoma, I just suppose because we are talking about project impact, poverty reduction and employment creation and closing the inequality gap, how does clarity of vision comes to play in the community that you develop in, and your 22,253 kilometers that you want to increase to 50,000? How will that impact our society clearly going forward, Mr. Mako?
Again, interesting question. And of course, we've been working in government for a long time now to know sometimes where government gets it right and where government doesn't. I think the one area where we need to improve as government is setting a vision that is not only clear, but is long-term enough to enable South Africa to have a chance to achieve it. The one challenge with the National Development Plan is that from the get-go, when it was announced, my key concern was that 2030 is too soon. And I think the evidence has proven that we're not likely to meet what we envisioned in the short period that we set for ourselves. Really and truly, 2030 should have been phase one of a much longer term vision that we set for the country. I'm glad the infrastructure plan has a target of 2050 because South Africa is starting from a low base. If you want to be inclusive, it's not only the urban areas, you've got rural communities that are starting from a very low base. And you have to generate new economies because agriculture and mining are not the key drivers of our economy any longer, even though they will still continue to sustain for some time. That's the first part. Of course, the second important part is we, over time, have lost the realization that active citizenry is critical to achieving country success. The changes in dispensation in our country came to the fore because of active citizenry. It was not just an effort of a few politicians that decided the fate of the entire country. The change from the apartheid system to the democratic system was because the entire population of this country that was against racism and segregation pulled together to influence the citizens of the world to assist South Africa to have a change. This is a key component in developmental planning and delivery. You will not be able to deliver in communities if your communities are not on board. And we've got enough evidence of how projects have been frustrated because communities, first of all, don't know what's happening. Secondly, they're not clear about how they're going to get involved. And thirdly, they are not part of the solution of preserving and maintaining the asset after the construction is finished. And I think those two components are pretty critical in assisting South Africa to galvanize in terms of how, when you've got a vision and it is clear, you have a much better chance of delivering on it.
You make a very interesting statement here. I've just written one down. Active citizenry is critical to a nation's success. That is that is not my parting word, but that is actually wonderful that we need to look at. And that might be part of what is our why. And that is part of what Ms. Chamane said about rural development, passionate about what is happening. And Ms. Chamane, I'm going to come back to you in terms of your maintenance strategy that you talked about, that we create all these lovely projects. There is no skills transfer. There is no maintenance plan. How do we take it forward? But Mr. Makuzoma said something about maintenance plan from Sandra, 50-50, CapEx 50-50, but they are going to change it soon to 45-55. So tell us, based on your experience from the rural community, how do you expect project development to create skills transfer and also be able to do maintenance, not allowing people to immigrate out of the rural development? Maybe just give us some key pointers so we can take that forward.
Thanks, Alu. I think during we need to start training or being involved, the people that will be doing the maintenance. If the clients or the custodian start saying within the people that are employed to do the construction, maybe 20% or 5%, they're the one that will be doing the maintenance for the project. So they will trained and from how the project was implemented and how it would be maintained after it's completed. And they must also be given a formal training that is accredited not just for a paper, but for them to be able to maintain for the long term. Because we can do lovely roads, but if we're not maintaining the roads,
lost Ms. Chamane.
People.
So, Ms. Chamane, you can continue. I can hear you.
Oh, okay. If we continue doing the infrastructure, maintain, those people that are maintaining it, they don't have know-how of how to maintain that type of infrastructure. Is the kind that we are facing. So my proposal is that maybe the people that are doing construction, they get trained during the construction, they get skills for maintenance transfers, skills for maintenance during construction, and continuously maintain training for maintenance. And also I've spoken about the quality of the education that we're getting from artisans. If we can, as a country, we produce high quality of artisans, that can help us in terms of the maintenance of our projects.
Thank you, Ms. Chamane. Mr. Makuzoma, I will come back to you because I think during your presentation, you talked about your asset management ITs and what you do with it. And you talked about maintenance and all that. So based on what Ms. Chamane is saying, what is SANRA's role in terms of your routine maintenance and how you go about your maintenance spend in terms of assisting the community and getting them to actually get involved? Can you just enlighten us from what you do from that point of view?
Sure, thanks. I think the most important principle is you need to take a more life cycle perspective into infrastructure. We've seen in many occasions in our country where we follow the political term and we focus on accelerated delivery of infrastructure with no plans for maintenance, only to meet the objectives of the political term. And then eventually people ask themselves, but who's going to maintain this asset? There's a debate. Meanwhile, the asset deteriorates. So from a SANRA perspective, you tend to take that more long-term perspective in terms of infrastructure delivery. So as I said, first of all, the asset management system is data-driven. So we do condition assessments of our roads on an annual basis. There are municipalities that have not done condition assessments in over a decade. I mean, that's not sustainable. There are provinces who struggle to set up the kind of asset management system that we have because it's expensive. So the second part, of course, is you set up a system and you allow plug-ins so that not everybody has to replicate a system that is expensive. Now, SANRAL has a system that's available, and we have offered it to other roads authorities, because all you really need to do is to collect data and upload it so that it's available for entities to be able to download and plan. So if we have a system of collecting the data that is more centralized, supported possibly by the National Department of Transport, you are able to upload into the system, and people can then access the system and be able to download for planning purposes. They prioritize, and then they are able to motivate for monies. Thirdly, of course, you need to have clarity in terms of funding policy and budget allocations. In many occasions, we've seen government drives an agenda of funding infrastructure development, and maintenance takes a back burner. Then cyclically, you get to a point where there's a problem with maintenance, and there's an emphasis on maintenance funding, but CAPEX takes a back burner. Now, it's not an either or, it's both. You need to maintain that kind of balance. And then thirdly, of course, you have to be able to maintain your entire asset on an annual basis. You don't maintain part of it. And this is where some people are getting it wrong. So we have entities that we've appointed. We are using our budget to maintain each and every kilometer every year, which is what you should do. If you have 10,000 kilometers of road and you only maintain 3,000 of them in any given year, you're going to run into problems very soon, because the time it takes you to come around again is too long, and the quality index goes down. And by the time you have to maintain, you have to do much more expensive maintenance than you would have done if you were doing it regularly. And I think that's what rescues us. So from a budget discipline perspective, SANRAL will spend money on maintenance first before we put money on any CAPEX. Only when money remains do we spend on CAPEX. And even then, it's improvements first before new infrastructure, because there's no sense in building new infrastructure if you can't maintain the asset that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Makuzoma. I think one key takeaway from that answer is life cycle planning. Ms. Chamane talked about planning as well, and alignment with both national and provincial. So if we are planning, we need to understand life cycle in terms of our cost allocation and things like that. Thank you. Dr. Foster, the question I have for you in your second point or takeaway, you talked about aligning the why with excellence.
Yes.
Can you just explain that? Why and excellence?
So what I mean with excellence is that, and we heard it with some of the other speakers today as well, when we do try to at first identify the right problem to solve and then get to a solution to solve it, one needs the best of us to do it. And we also have to have confidence to choose the best of what we've got in the country and otherwise to get these big projects rolling. And the best is not necessarily the biggest company. The best is the mix of the team that actually gets it done. But we don't just choose anyone because they are an engineer or they are someone who can do it. We want to align the best of us so that we do get that impact, and that we do align on time, and that we do get what we want out of it, and that we create jobs, because that's in the end what we really want to do. We want to create economy and open the economy through the projects that we really do.
Dr. Foster, dear participants, the Q&A is meant for Olu, the facilitator, and the panel members. It's actually meant for every one of us. So if you have a question you want to ask, please put it in the Q&A so that we can get the panelists to actually answer those questions for us. So thank you. And the question I want to ask from each one of you, anybody can come online to actually say that. Based on your experience and the projects you've been involved in that you've done so far, which one can you say had the greatest impact to date in terms of your project, and why? So, Mr. Makuzoma, can I use you as the first one to take the answer?
Well, in our environment, I think being deliberate about developing a strategy backed by a clear transformation policy, understanding the kind of construction industry we operate under, was very crucial to unlocking opportunities for successful infrastructure delivery. As I said before, people walk up on site and say, but what do you have for us? We're tired of these white companies coming here doing work and we benefiting nothing. So out of the transformation policy, we had the 14-point plan, which then guides the contractor on how to proceed in launching and executing a project within communities, setting up structures that would involve stakeholders that are important in that locality, and presenting to them the proposed approach to how delivery would occur and soliciting inputs on how it can be optimized. That kind of approach creates harmony around the project, and it creates a lot of ambassadors who are stakeholders for the project. And it makes it much better from a prospect perspective for the project to be implemented successfully. Without that, projects have been proven to be stopped and nobody wins, and the infrastructure does not get delivered, and government loses a lot of money.
Thank you for that. My controversial question to you, Ito.
So let's deal with that. I mean, from the time I started at Sanral, I indicated that we have to realize that people have power. People have power and we need to respect that. And when people say they were not consulted sufficiently, we need to own up to that. And I have. Throughout my tenure, I have said, let's accept that we could have consulted more. And we need to acknowledge that people are aggrieved about this matter. Having said that, I feel that we are stuck in politics of the e-toll scheme. And unfortunately, people are not allowing all of us to move forward. They keep insisting that they were not consulted, but that can't be the end of the story. Now that we know what the problem is, we need to move on from it, because this impasse is compromising us. There's phase 2 and phase 3, for instance, of the Gauteng freeways that must be developed, because this is the economic hub. We've lost a decade already, and there are no plans to expand the network. That is compromising everybody, both supporters and detractors of the e-toll scheme. And in fact, it's affecting the entire country. So we can't just end there. Thirdly, there's a reason for government, and I think someone alluded to this earlier. Government is there to make decisions that are hard in the interest of citizens, even when citizens themselves don't realize that those decisions are in their interest. Because we've got, 60 million South Africans, all with different views. If we allowed everybody to make a decision, we would go nowhere. That is why you've got an elected government that is meant to make decisions and be able to move us forward. Now, if that government is not making decisions, unfortunately, we're in paralysis, and that doesn't help. And that's really where we are right now. What I'm more concerned about is we are standing in the way of future development that has to happen now, that we are delaying, and the people who are going to pay are all South Africans, not only Gauteng citizens. We have about 150 billion rands worth of projects that are not able to be implemented, critical projects, because there's a general anti-toll sentiment in the country and people are rejecting the application of private finance to develop road infrastructure. Now, the fiscus alone is not going to take us there. Simple practical example. I had to make a decision for us to move ahead and implement the N2 and N3 project in KwaZulu-Natal because the toll option was just not accepted locally. Now we're doing it. Unfortunately, with government allocations, it's going to take us 10 years to deliver that project. With private finance, we would have delivered it in 4 years. But that's the reality. If we reach consensus that that's the approach we want to take, let's agree on it and let's proceed with it, so that people don't complain if they're stuck in traffic for 10 years because we're busy improving the road, because that's the choice that we took. Having lost on the N1 and N2 in Cape Town, when we tried to develop that scheme through toll, there was a lot of celebration that Sanral was beaten and the city won and the province won. 4 years from then, the projects are still not rolled out because none of us have money, not the province, not the municipality, not us. So how do we find solutions that are going to lead to unlocking infrastructure development that is necessary through conversation as South Africans, so that we make decisions that we are able to live with. If we delay development, that's a conscious decision we make, and we must live with it. If we accelerate development, it's a conscious decision we make, and we must deal with, what comes with that decision that we make. I think that's really the crossroads that South Africa is, and clear funding policy pronouncement is absolutely critical to unlock some of the infrastructure programs that are waiting in the wings for implementation.
Mr. Makozama, thank you for facing the question head on, and your passion about it actually comes through. And the last statement you made, clarity of vision. Once we have a clear direction, then as a citizen, we go somewhere. If we don't have clarity of vision and we still dilly-dallying about what we need to do, is affecting the entire community, not only outing. Thank you for that. Ms. Chamane, just tell us, based on the projects you've developed, your experience, which one can you say has the greatest impact so far in the community you find yourself in? Then I'll go to, we have less than 4 minutes to round up this panel discussion before others come online. So Ms. Chamane, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think the most important is community involvement. It make project being successful from you design the project. Now the community, you know what they want, what the expectations there will be on the project. We involve this. That is the best. Then putting engineering first, but community involvement.
Thank you very much. Dr. Foster, your turn.
For me, I must say it's difficult to choose one, but if I have to say, I really love the Impact Catalyst program. I love it for the fact that it brings together so many people aligned to the same vision. And when it creates sustainable business that you can scale outside of a dependency, for instance, in this case, on mining, and I think that is success and that is excellence. So today that comes up to me and I'm passionate about that.
Thank you very much. The last question I'm going to ask, Mr. Makozoma, you know we are in the CESA infrastructure in Indaba, and every CESA company is out to make fees, right? So the question that is coming through here is that this, I'm just going to read it as put on the Q&A. So on the page of life cycle planning as indicated by Mr. Makozoma, when can we expect the statutory fees to be balancing CapEx and maintenance as well? So I'm going to ask you that question.
Thank you very much. I think that's a conversation between organized government and organized consulting industry. We've had these discussions with Mr. Campbell. We need to find middle ground. Just as there may be concern about fees and rates in particular in construction projects, there's also a concern about detrimental competition in the consulting industry that is eroding value and possibly creating a threat to sustainable infrastructure delivery. It's something that is on our platform and we continue to engage. We're happy to engage with the consulting industry in that regard going forward. Just if you'll allow, there was another question on the chat box that I thought we should comment on. And it's now that we've had all of this experience about project stoppages and 30%, what advice do we have for other parties? And really what I'd like to emphasize is we should not criminalize poverty. And we should not assume that everyone that invades construction sites is a hooligan. Indeed, we condemn criminal acts and we think the police should act without fear and favor. And there's a lot of fear and favor in police these days. They don't want to do anything because, unfortunately, the Marikana experience has been bad in the history of this country. But without policing, we're in trouble. So law and order must be enforced. But beyond that, I think we should create platforms to be able to engage our people, understand what their needs are, help them understand what the policies and regulations are, because in certain cases, they don't understand it. People come and say, the president said we get our 30% from projects. We want it. In fact, if you give it to us, we won't even bother you. So they don't even want to do work. They want to take the 30% and go. A conversation is required so that people understand exactly how things work. And there you find common ground. Thank you very much for hosting us today.
Yeah, thanks for picking up that question. I did not see it, but there's another question there. Are engineers doing enough to create jobs through their projects, including implementing labor-intensive construction? I will leave that for the president of CESA, Mr. Sugampili, that is going to round up and give a talk to that. But just to round up quickly, one parting shot from every single one of us. Let's start with the lady, Ms. Chamane. What is your parting word to us from this discussion?
Thank you guys for having me on the panel. I'm hoping engineers and government officials will be implementing the project. Honestly, as it's been said, that there's too much competition that end up putting the quality of the work in not in good standard. Let's put the project first, then the money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So avoid state capture, period. Okay, let's go to Dr. Foster. Last parting.
Thank you. So my takeaway from all this is infrastructure is really a catalyst for development. But what I'd really have, if I could wish it, is that we could have a great collaboration between private and public sector where we all align towards this greater good. There's a lot to offer in the country. We have to open the economy and we have to empower people through it. I'm passionate about that, and I think it can be done through all the groups here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Foster. I wanted Mr. Makuzama to give us a parting word, but it seems he's not on the panel anymore. If he is, I can give you his parting word. Active citizenry is critical to a nation's success. Thank you for taking time out. I'm going to hand over to Mr. Campbell to take us on. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much, Alu, and thank you to your panel. Certainly, I think very interesting conversation, many takeaways, and of course, there's such a link between all of the conversations we've been having over the last 2 days, and certainly we need to see infrastructure more from a life cycle perspective and not in its discrete parts. That being said, we probably have to start approaching our infrastructure development, and I think it's alluded to in the National Infrastructure Plan. It's design, construction, and in the O&M portion of it, maybe we should start thinking along the lines of a maintenance plan of sorts, for particular structures and all of that. I think certainly can become a reimbursable component of a fee structure from professionals who've designed it and built it. Because who better to advise you? If you buy a Mercedes-Benz, you don't just walk out without knowing what are the intervals between the service and why you should service it, and so I think therein lies a whole lot of merits. But like I said earlier on, when we had the professionalization conversation, there are other systemic issues that may stand in the way. And having come from a maintenance background, I'm fully on board. As boring as it may sound, the railway infrastructure in Transnet Freight Rail, that was part of what I did in my good old engineering days, and we did exactly that. Condition monitoring, and you'd map out the trends of deterioration and you'd know how to intervene. You'd try and preempt. So there's many asset management strategies that one can apply to your maintenance. But unbeknownst to all of us, we run into this unintended consequence of a medium-term expenditure framework, an MFMA and a PFMA that says thou shalt not go beyond the 3-year period. Now, guess what? There are not enough machines in the country. I think SANRAL is probably one of the few owners of a machine that will measure and do the quality index of a road. And likewise in Transnet Freight Rail, here's the conundrum. I want to open the market, I want to run an open tender, and I require people to have this kind of machine. Except that machine costs so much money. I mean, hundreds of millions, and you have to import it. And there is just nobody that's going to do it if they have a contract that doesn't extend beyond 3 years. You need 5, 10 years at least to amortize that investment. So you almost are scuppered in your efforts even before you've started. And I think there is another systemic aspect that limits how we may be able to improve on how we go about doing things. And to the last point, and this conversation will take place with SANRAL and other client bodies, is the over-competitiveness and the detriment to the service delivery. And if any one of us were on yesterday, you would have listened to Mark Steiner from the American Consulting Engineering Companies, the association, CESA's counterpart, and his talk was on QBS. I know there are a lot of people out there who don't believe in QBS because they say that there's no room for transformation. But Mark actually gave an indication of how that is applied. And simply put, and I'm going to use the words of a book that's been written by the new president of USA, Dr. Male. We must lift as we rise. And unless we lift as we rise, we are not going to help each other as a nation to get to the point of equity and equality. I think we spend too much time stepping on people and trampling them down whilst we rise. So colleagues, that's my part for now. And I think before we go to the absolute closing remarks, just a few announcements. Firstly, there will be an Aon lucky draw, which we will do, I would imagine, I guess now before the conference resolutions. And you know, there's no doubt that, you know, this has been a huge and important discussion across a broad spectrum of topics over the past 2 days, from industry leaders, and we've been challenged by many thought-provoking discussions and commentary. So at this point, allow me to get our conference organizers to very quickly do the lucky draw from Aon. For those of us who were fortunate to find a seat at their 4-seated table, because often when one went there, the system will tell you there's no more space, there's only room for 4. So those of you who were lucky enough and did have that conversation with Aon, Natasha, please, if you could do the lucky draw of the prize winner for the Aon prize.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chris. Really appreciate it. As one of the sponsors, I must say that it was quite a successful Indaba. I really enjoyed the many speakers. But good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us at the Aon Lounge over the last 2 days and for engaging with us. And a very special thank you also to those delegates that actually entered the Aon competition. Just a note that our winner will be going home with a hamper to the value of 500 Rand, and it includes a branded Aon backpack. It includes a first aid kit and also a 6-pack cooler bag. So the person who wins it can either put their cool drink or their alcohol. We'll leave that up to them. And so without further delay, I really want to announce who that winner is. And I must say, from the conversations we've had with him, he was quite sparky about finding out who was the winner. So our winner is Anton Kloppers. I'll repeat, Anton Kloppers, and I did see him comment in the chat. Congratulations and enjoy your spoils, Anton. We'll be in contact with you to get your address, and we'll have that hamper delivered to you so you can enjoy your spoils.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, congratulations, Anton. And yeah, as Natasha
Congrats.
says, enjoy your spoils.
Thank you,
Thank
Chris.
you, Natasha, for that.
Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege at this moment to hand over to the CESA president, Mr. Sugen Pillay, who will present the conference resolutions as we have tried to record these over the 2 days of proceedings, and bear in mind that these resolutions are resolutions, not long stories, and certainly they will be guiding CESA in our future work between now and wherever this journey takes us. So again, over to you. Thank you.
So yeah, thank you very much to all of our speakers, our facilitators, our panelists. I can't believe that we actually at the end of 2 days of some very intense and insightful discussion. So thank you. And of course, to all of our delegates as well, and our media partners, thank you for staying with us for the 2 days. And I want to go through now our conference resolutions. So firstly, I just want to emphasize our rebuilding with purpose as we partake in this huge rebuilding exercise that we all hope is going to gain momentum in the very near future as soon as possible. That we need to think to widen our perspective, especially us as engineers, the work that we do, and really coupling that with the why of what you do, what your business division does, what your company does, and how do we rebuild with a bigger purpose in mind. As I noted that we must, and this came across quite clearly through the conference as well, we as engineers, we must actively contribute to the rebuilding project. And really that means optimizing the impact of the projects that we deliver. How do we use our projects as tools to address poverty, to address inequality, to address unemployment and underdevelopment? I said it before, and I'm going to say it again. Infrastructure delivery is not about just that piece of infrastructure. It's about how do we enable society to function better, to function more effectively. How do we contribute to the objectives of the country, of the government, to our local government sector? And really this means that in all of the projects that we do, in all of the discussions that we have, we need that active and effective advocacy. We need to be able to discuss with the decision makers. We need to be comfortable when we speak to politicians so that we speak from a position where we are technical experts, where we can contribute effectively to those decisions and those discussions when it comes to the infrastructure rebuild program. We need to also retake our role as trusted advisors. And really for that to happen, we need to always put the objectives of the projects and of this rebuilding exercise at the forefront of what we do. We need to look at the ultimate impact that these projects are going to make. So really all of that coming together is how do we rebuild with purpose, and how do we as engineers effectively and efficiently contribute to those processes, not just sitting on the sidelines, but having those conversations and engaging with all of the decision-making processes that are going on. We also saw that one of these issues that came across quite strongly is that we as CESA, as the industry, we need to continue to advocate for quality cost-based selection processes, and to re-emphasize this concept of value for money. We slowly, I think slowly but surely, we're moving away from the least cost providers. We're looking more and more at quality and functionality in the decision-making processes, specifically when it comes to supply chain decisions. But I think also when it comes to advocating for this quality cost-based selection procedures, we mustn't leave aside the imperatives for transformation, for building up new companies. And there are obviously, as we heard, methods to bring those types of initiatives into this entire process. Yeah, one of the other key things that came across was really integrity without compromise. Our stance as CESA in terms of a zero tolerance approach to corruption and wrongdoing is well known, has been well publicized, but we need to continue with that. And there was talk about actively reporting wrongdoing, and hopefully with the new measures around whistleblowing and protecting whistleblowers, we make this more and more part of what we do. So it's really integrity without compromise, and saying no to corruption in any form wherever it does come up. A very important topic that we spoke about was about professionalization of the state, and indeed to continue to professionalize the private sector as well, that we all move forward in this journey. Really collaboration with the School of Governance, and use all of the avenues there that are available to us. And really there's many opportunities for us to collaborate with the public sector as a private sector organization. And also through that, I forgot to mention before, through the advocacy, we continue through our involvement through BUSA, Business for SA, and all of those wonderful platforms that we have to collaborate on all of these important issues. Very importantly is that we must continue the transformation journey. It is a difficult journey. It's a long journey. I think we've heard that there's it's not going to be a short-term process. We've been on this journey for a number of years now, but we need to continuously work at this. It's something we have seen, and we have made great strides in our transformation journey, particularly within CESA and the industry over the last few years. And we really want to continue that journey. And through that is to make opportunities available to HDIs, to the young professionals coming through, to startup companies. How do we bring all of that into the transformation journey? There was also talk about upping our game when it comes to compliance reporting. I think that is going to gain more momentum as we go, as we continue with this journey. And then finally, as part of this wider transformation journey, how do we also embrace technology to drive efficiency in the infrastructure delivery process? I think there's so many tools, there's so many avenues that are available to us to embrace that technology, to bring it into everything that we do. And in each of the projects that we do, if we can start bringing these things in, helping our clients along as well in this technology journey, informing them of what's available. Maybe they're not aware of it. Maybe we have better insight into what is actually available, but really bringing these different forms of technology that are available into all of the projects that we do. And indeed, all of the programs and also the advocacy that we do. So very briefly, I think that summarizes some of the resolutions, some of the things that we as CESA that are most certainly we're going to continue to drive forward in our engagement with all of the stakeholders that we interact with on an ongoing basis. And we will continue to be a partner in infrastructure delivery. We will continue to advocate for value for money, for getting the best that we can out of the infrastructure decisions that we make. We are also looking forward to our next infrastructure Indaba. We are hoping that it is going to be in person. Hopefully we can have that in person next year sometime. And really, a really big thank you to all of you for joining us. And thank you once again for being part of this Indaba this year. Thanks very much.
Thank you again. And thank you once again to everyone who came to join us over the last 2 days. I'm truly, we feel honored that you took the time to honor us with your presence. You know, the numbers of people that we saw certainly between yesterday and today bears testament to that the information was most likely very valuable, and you will find it valuable. And we always seek to bring those valuable conversations to resolve the kinds of challenges that we face in our country, because, you know, at the end of it all, we are not only about solving engineering solutions, but we also seek to solve many other problems that we may be facing. So with that, colleagues, I would then like to bring to an end this CESA Indaba for 2021. I really do thank you for joining us. And a last pitch, those of you who enjoy a round of golf and are based in Johannesburg, unfortunately this cannot be a virtual event, please feel free to join us on the 13th of October for our CESA Presidential Golf Day. It will be a live event. And then furthermore, later on in the year, our flagship Engineering Excellence Awards, Aon, partnered with Aon. Please don't miss that event as well. With that, I'd like to thank you all and bid you a good afternoon and good evening, and enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of the week. Thank you from everyone at CESA, and thank you to all of those who had put any effort into making this conference happen. I must say that, and I'm glad that many of us were pleasantly surprised by this refreshed look, different platform, not always perfect, but that's technology, and maybe there lies another opportunity. If we rolled out the spectrum more broadly, we might not have these internet challenges that we have, you know, that plague us. Many of our presenters, as an unplanned situation. So, yeah, we look forward to that the time when we may have all of these tools at our disposal, and more than that, we look forward to a time when we may be able to do this conference in person and most likely in a hybrid form, which I believe is going to be the future of many of these kinds of events. So you have a good day, and we look forward to having you again in the future. Bye-bye for now.